From our studios in beautiful Mandan, North Dakota, along the mighty Missouri River, here is your guru of geek, Marlo Anderson.
How will technology create urban disruption?
Oh, my. It already has.
It already has, yes. Yeah. It's going to go even crazier in the near future, though. You'll be simply amazed at how how technology will change how we live, work, and play. Miss Metaverse will be joining us later to chat about urban disruption, or about the urban disruption that's about to happen.
Yeah.
And how did we end up with the QWERTY keyboard?
The QWERTY. Yeah.
Yeah. Is it QWERTY?
QWERTY.
We have some amazing details on that, by the way. I just, I was typing this morning and I thought, how did we end up with the QWERTY keyboard? So I did a little investigation.
I think I know the story, but I'll hold it.
It's actually kind of cool.
I will hold my peace for now.
In news, all kinds of crazy stuff going on. Self-driving cars, of course, seems to be a hot topic all the time.
Yep.
Apple received a permit to begin testing autonomous vehicles. By the way, at the control panel, Jim, the producer extraordinaire, Jim Walsh.
Hi.
I keep forgetting to introduce you sometimes. So, your weekend was great?
Yeah, very blissfully uneventful Easter Sunday.
Kind of.
I mean, we're not really big on Easter. We just basically it was a nice Sunday and the weather was okay.
Nothing fantastic, but
we went to Cracker Barrel for our Easter brunch.
Were they busy?
Moderately busy.
Okay.
They're not packed to the rafters. I mean, we got right in.
Okay.
I've been in. There are times I've been in there and we had to wait a while.
Sure.
Not yesterday. We did get in.
But
they were open for business. Yeah. Walmart was open for business.
Yeah, I was surprised at that yesterday too.
Yeah,
so.
And Dan's was open, but the pharmacy was closed.
Right.
Because I had to stop and get some meds.
It's kind of
how I am when I get off my meds.
That's right. That's right. Thank goodness you're back on them today.
Fire bad. Yeah, I'll get back on it today.
Easter's one of those holidays. We're closed today, but you guys were kind of closed here on Friday.
Yeah, we closed Friday. And I had no say in that. They just told me we're closed on Friday.
So it's one of those things.
I said, okay.
You either get Good Friday or Easter Monday off. Now, I guess is how.
I'm sure a shoot not going to show up just to make a point.
Exactly. Yeah. That's exactly right. So I didn't mean to just get into the show.
I
just have so many things to talk about today. So. Self-driving cars. Apple received a permit to begin testing autonomous vehicles. This has been rumored for a long time.
Yeah, I did hear about that.
But Apple is now officially in it. General Motors says it'll add 1,100 jobs over the next 5 years in their autonomous vehicle development.
Excellent.
Just at the San Francisco
What kind of training do you need for that, for these guys who are just getting ready to go to college or their kids are going to college?
Well, have you ever seen Crash Test Dummies before?
You mean the band? Oh. Do not attempt this at home. We are professional dummies.
I love how you just stopped for a second. That was good.
The first thing that went through my mind was, that band from the 90s.
Yes.
No, wait a minute.
They had a couple hits, too, I think.
Yeah.
So, yeah. No, I mean, anything from engineering to, they might actually employ somebody like you and I just to go out and drive them around.
Because we were talking, one of the things we are going to talk about is the droid. Developments in the droid technology, and there's a market, an expanding market for people to fix commercial droids that are broken
for drones,
or drones.
Yes,
what do I say? Droids. Yeah.
I guess you could intermix them a little bit. But
droids, potato. No, for the drones that crash or they begin to malfunction, somebody's going to need to be able to fix those.
Right. That's exactly
right.
And
I don't know a thing about the mechanical aspect of it, but if I were running the business, realistically, how much would I need to know mechanically?
Well, you might not need to know a lot, like you were saying earlier.
How much did Ray Kroc have to know about actually making a hamburger?
Not a whole lot.
Exactly.
Yes. But he figured it out, didn't he? You know, and I think that's kind of where we're at with a lot of these technologies right now, is that we're kind of figuring out the path as we move forward.
Yeah.
So I agree. I think that there'll be a lot of opportunities. So where's the school at? It's Northland College Community and
Northwestern
College?
Minnesota. So I'm thinking it's probably in the vicinity of somewhere between Fargo and Grand Forks. Fargo would be southeast.
Right. But you're thinking North Dakota, though. This is actually northwestern Minnesota.
Northwestern Minnesota. So probably near Grand Forks.
Yeah, I would say to the northwest. We'll check that out over the break maybe and find out where it's at. So.
What's the deal? They're
going to actually offer classes, the way it looks to your news report here. So that you'll be able to go out and actually maybe have a little bit of a degree in drone repair.
Yeah, or at least get a few credit hours, so you'll have a little bit of expertise on the subject.
I think if you fly, you would be able to at least have an understanding of drones.
Oh, yeah.
And then if you want to have a repair shop, I mean, it basically is going to come down to the fact that you have the parts to repair them.
Right.
They're really not that difficult. It's just a matter of availability of parts. So, right now, of course, you can hop online and get them, and you get them in a couple days or a week or whatever it is. Or the person can drop it off at your shop, and you'll have the parts available, and you can take it home yet today, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there are certain parts that will be in more demand than others, and we can have those ready to go.
Absolutely.
And the more unusual parts we can order.
Right. So if you had like the more expensive drones, like an Airbee, for example, those are about $30,000 for this drone, but it's a little fixed-wing aircraft is what it is.
Yeah.
And, somebody is going to want to have that. And they're basically styrofoam. So if you break a chunk off of it over here or whatever, if you actually could...
Really?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. If you were in that business where, let's say, fiberglass and that type of thing,
yeah,
you would be custom made for moving into the drone industry repair business. Just saying. So, because, those craft are maybe 2 pounds. I mean, they're ultra light. They're pretty big. I mean, they have like a 5 or 6 foot wingspan.
So what you're saying is you don't necessarily have to be an expert on aeronautics or have a physics degree.
No, I don't think so. I think you could get into this relatively easily. I think the big thing with the repair of this, just like anything else, would be that if you have a passion for it, then I think you're really suited for this.
Well, see, I have a passion for the idea of the money.
Okay.
But I don't really have a passion I do have a passion for certain things in life, but that's not really one of them. So I don't know if it would be a wise thing for me to go into that business.
Well, I guess if
I'm just doing it for the money.
Yeah, well, I don't know. If you find a couple of people on your staff that are passionate about it, I mean, there's always the management side of things, and that usually doesn't...
Well, exactly. I mean, Barnum needed Bailey.
That's exactly
to take care of the books.
That's right. That's exactly how it is. So you never know. I mean, that could be an okay thing.
I mean, even if you're the Beatles, you need Brian Epstein or whoever in the background to take care of the business stuff.
Somebody needs to do that.
Yeah.
So I think there's a possibility of that, and there's a couple of these shops that are popping up around the country right now. So absolutely. So yeah, and then Waymo, Waymo is Google's autonomous vehicle division.
Okay.
And Uber,
not to be confused with Whammo.
That's right, Waymo and Whammo. Uber are fighting in court right now over the self-driving technology. The theory is that when Anthony Lewandowski left Google, he took stuff with him, files, 14,000 files or something like that.
Whoa.
He's saying that he didn't, and they created a company called Otto, O-T-T-O, which then Uber bought, and Otto is a kit that you can put onto semi-trucks and create autonomous trucks out of these things. So anyway, now Google's claiming that he took the technology with him, and he's saying that he's not. If this court case were to lead to Google winning, then Uber's self-driving program could possibly be suspended because of this court case. So it's kind of interesting what's going on there. It's funny that the technology is way ahead of what everybody thinks it is, and yet there's all these roadblocks all the time, whether it's federal regulation or court cases now that could actually stymie the development of this. So pretty interesting. And after the break, Jim, we're going to talk about United's debacle. Have you ever been pulled off an airplane before?
No, physically.
Never.
God, no.
Have you ever been asked to leave an airplane?
I've been in situations where they ask for volunteers.
Okay. You see that occasionally.
Oh yeah.
But
that's not so bad.
No, but it is interesting, what's happened with United since. So, all right, after the break, everybody, we will talk about United and maybe some things you can do to help yourself out with some apps.
Yeah, a little music here from the Crash Test Dummies.
I love these guys.
Right now, it's 33.
Dave Ramsey is heard here. Super Talk 1270.
Follow the Guru of Geek at Facebook.com/The Tech Ranch or Twitter at Guru of Geek or TheTechRanch.com. Here again is your Guru of Geek, Marlo Anderson.
And of course, with all those ways of following us, there's all kinds of other ways you can listen to the show too. We're on
options, baby.
We are techpodcast.com. If it's Tech is here, we're on the Blueberry Network.
Right.
We're on the Roku. We're on iTunes. We're on TuneIn, and of course, our own app, Radio Pup.
You and I have a case of Monday mouth.
I always have that problem.
Yeah.
It's a problem with the show being on Monday. Is that, I haven't loosened up the jaws yet a little bit. So
I get my tongue all tangled around my eye tooth, and I can't see what I'm saying.
Somebody's out there going, an eye tooth? What's an eye tooth?
Yeah.
I mean, technology-wise, right? Because they're
right.
iTunes, iTooth,
yeah.
right? Yeah. That's pretty funny. So we want to talk a little bit about United. And we were just talking over the break about if you've ever been physically removed or asked to be removed.
Untied Airlines.
Yeah. Boy, they have been taking a beating.
I've never had that experience. I mean, I've been on flights where they asked if somebody would volunteer to take the next flight over or whatever because they had an overbooking. And they always give you, they offer you a free ticket anywhere you want to go that you could use in the next year, which is nice.
It's nice, yeah.
The one or two times the opportunity came up, I almost took it. It was back in the early 90s. If I'd had a cell phone, this was actually before cell phones came in. And in the early 90s, it would have been a real pain in the neck to get a hold of the guy who was picking me up at the airport.
Sure.
If I had had a cell phone with me, I could have just called him and say, hey, dude, just pick me up an hour later or whenever.
Yep. I've been on a couple planes where they've had unruly passengers that they've removed physically.
Really?
Yeah.
Now, that has never happened. I've never seen that happen.
Yeah, I've been on a couple. And yeah, I mean, and it's usually alcohol involved. They've had a few too many to drink, and they're getting a little crazy, and people are complaining about them. So they come and try to ask them to settle down, and they don't. And then a couple security officers come on board and remove them. So
the worst flight experience I ever had, I guess I've been lucky, because the worst one was not really that bad. It was just we were flying through a storm, and they had us in a holding pattern over Newark International Airport. They had us racked and stacked over Newark. It was the middle of the winter, and they had this massive winter storm coming through. And for about an hour, they had us flying in a big circle over New York through these clouds that looked like the end of the world. That was a little disconcerting, but after a while, you just pull down the shade and not look at it.
Yep.
That was the worst for me. And having said that, like I say, I guess I've been blessed. Knock wood.
Sure.
I've never seen that people drag kicking and screaming out of the airplane, or I've never seen people, like bad trips or whatever.
Right. What amazes me,
I've heard of people who have.
Before we get into things that you can do to help yourself a little bit, but it really amazes me that in today's world, I don't know if people just block it out, the fact that everybody's carrying a camera with them nowadays.
Yeah.
I mean, it just amazes me that all the stupid things that go on in the world. If there are people around you, somebody has a camera, and probably most people have a camera with them, and they're videoing you as you're doing this.
Right.
And
they got pictures of this guy getting dragged up the aisle. Yeah. Dragged physically up the aisle.
Yeah. Bloodied and the whole bit, It's
doctor.
Yeah.
He said, I got to be there. I'm a doctor.
Yeah.
They need me there.
And then they replace him with employees for United. I mean, it doesn't get any worse than that, But there's a couple services that, if you had some issues with, and I've been on flights where and it seems to be a common problem nowadays when they overbook flights, right?
Well, they overbooked them. They overbook them as a matter of routine because there's always going to be a certain percentage of people who will cancel.
Well, that's what they say, but there are times, of course, when that doesn't happen, so they got to deal with it, So there's two companies, there's two apps actually. One's called AirHelp, AIRHELP, another one called Service. So AirHelp actually will go to bat for you.
Oh.
So if you get bumped, AirHelp says it's helped thousands of U.S. flyers recover an average of $800 in cash for overbooking.
Excellent.
So by law, people can get a maximum of $1,350.
Whoa.
So if you're bumped, you can actually be compensated up to $1,350, and you still have your means of getting to your destination. Cool. They still have to complete that contract.
I was thinking about that coming in this morning. If they bump you, they should at the very least give you a comp ticket.
Right. Well, of course,
that's kind of what we're talking about here.
We are. The airline, of course, wants to do as minimal as they have to.
Well, obviously.
So if there's somebody that's willing to, and that's why they always start with nothing. Are you willing to take an extra, a flight in a couple hours?
Oh, yeah, they bid low. Yeah.
Right, and then they keep working their way up. But AirHelp also states that you should never accept travel vouchers because you're entitled to more in cash.
Oh.
So AirHelp.
See, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So AirHelp, if you ever get bumped, these people will go to bat for you. They take 25% for their fee. If they don't get any money for you, then there is no fee. And on top of it, they will actually take them to court. They will actually sue the airline for you. So it's pretty impressive what they have done. And,
rent a lawyer.
When you're in a situation like this where you're not, when you're being forced to be bumped, when you have a contract with this, you've bought the ticket, and they're not willing to compensate you up to that $1,350.
Now, this service, do they just skim it off the top when you get awarded?
That's how it is, yeah. Yep. So
how much do they skim off?
25%.
That's not bad.
So if they're going to get
25% is better than 100% of nothing.
That's right, because right now that's kind of where you stand. You know, a lot of times that you'll get that. So then in service, on the other hand, is a startup that helps flyers recover goodwill compensation. So that means that even if airlines don't owe passengers cash for domestic delays, it may be able to negotiate vouchers or mileage as a gesture of goodwill.
Yeah.
So that's what they go after for you there. So there's two services. One is actually called Service. The other one is called AirHelp. So if you ever get caught in this, and you can just look these up online, you can get the app.
That's great.
They can help you out. So I would certainly check into that.
Well, they got websites for all kinds of neat stuff now.
Well, they say, AirHelp says that they've had a 64% increase in claims since this thing happened.
Any
word
on which airlines are worse than the others?
Boy, I don't know. I know there are worse ones. I used to know the answer to this, actually.
You see, I guess it depends on what you're looking for in an airline. You see, for me, for example, I'm unusual. I will never fly Southwest Airlines. I just don't like the Southwest experience.
So what is it you don't like about Southwest? Because I think they're one of the highest-rated service ones.
Yeah, but I just well, first of all, the atmosphere is like a damn flying bus.
Okay.
I like a little more subdued atmosphere. I like a serious attitude when I'm starting to sound like George Carlin here.
Well, that's okay. That's why
I don't like all the chit-chatty stuff that they do on Southwest. It's like, it becomes a very bad night at the Improv with the stewardesses trying to tell you jokes and everything. And just, lady, leave me alone,
Yep.
I don't like flying. Let me just cry in my pillow until it's over with.
I kind of understand that because I do a lot of flights to Las Vegas, for example, right?
Yeah.
And I'm going down there for work.
I would think Southwest would be the primary
well, out of here, it's the charter called Allegiant.
Right out of here. Right. Yeah, you're right.
Right. And, of course, everybody else is going down there to have a good time.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that, too, but I'm concentrating on work, so I'm trying to get my laptop out and everything else. And I understand that the chit-chat you're talking about because it's difficult when you're in a different frame of mind than the rest of the passengers that are on the vehicle that you're traveling in. So, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, next time I'll bring earbuds, and I'll
just
plug them right in. As soon as I see the stewardess open her pie hole, boop, pop them right in.
That's too funny.
Maybe I'll listen to some Crash Test Dummies.
So did you hear that Tesla is now the second most valuable car company?
Really?
Isn't that crazy?
That's wacky.
So they just overtook Ford. Ford's valued at $45 billion. Tesla has climbed to $48 billion. What's interesting about this, though, is that obviously this is just a lot of blue sky because Tesla doesn't even come close to selling the amount of cars.
Now, is this national or world?
This is worldwide, yeah.
Worldwide, okay.
Yeah. So this really, and then Tesla's not far behind Honda either, which is $54 billion. GM is $50.8 billion. So it's amazing that people are putting so much value on this company when they're selling 25,000 cars a year right now. So very interesting. Then also there's a train that's starting to run in Germany running on hydrogen.
Hydrogen?
So hydrogen, they fill it full of hydrogen across the top. And then,
didn't they have a bad experience with that?
One time, yeah.
The Hindenburg, yeah.
One time. And then
the humanity. That guy.
So then they pulls oxygen from the air.
Yeah.
And with one full tank, this train will go 500 miles. And like I said, pulling oxygen from the air. And its exhaust, water.
Okay.
So you fill it full of hydrogen,
That's cool.
You suck oxygen from the air, and its exhaust is water.
Now, is that a potential pollution problem? I know it sounds silly, but too much water vapor I suppose, would not be a good thing in the air.
The thing with water is that it's always the same. There's always the same
Water
amount
is
on
water,
the planet.
yeah.
You know, it doesn't matter in what form it is. It's always the same on the planet. So
Yeah.
that's what you have to think about. So I know we're coming up on the break there, everybody.
We are,
After the break, Miss Metaverse will be joining us to talk about disruption in our cities. So come on back.
Right now, it's 33.
The Red River Farm Network. Ag News is here on Super Talk 1270.
We're back to the Tech Ranch. Stream this program now at supertalk1270.com. Here is your guru of geek, Marlo Anderson.
And in studio, we have the producer extraordinaire. I'm trying to come up with something clever, Jim, and I'm not doing it
All-American
today.
good guy,
There you
devil
go.
may care, flying fool.
Yeah, I think you have more hair than I do, so I should just say that.
Hairy dude. My wife loves the hairy. You know, I'm one of these guys. I have hair all over my body, except where I want it.
Right.
you know.
I get that. As we age, the way it seems, you know, I never used to have. I'm going to gross everybody out here, but why is it that we can grow hair on our back now? And and
I got
no
hair
on the
coming
head,
out
right?
places it never came out.
I know,
before.
it's crazy.
Yeah, on top.
It's
Forget
gone.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I kept telling people I walked. I'm a little taller than most, you know. So I walk into door jams. When I was younger, I was probably about an inch taller.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing of age, right? You get a little shorter as you get older.
your bones sort of settle in.
Yeah. And anyway, so I would actually walk through doorways sometimes and just skim the top of my head.
Right.
So over the years, I just tell people that I've lost all my hair because I've been just shaving it off the top. So
I like it.
joining us from the island of Long, Miss Metaverse. How are you doing, Katie?
Hello. I'm doing well. How you doing, Marlo?
I'm doing fine, too. So we're going to talk a little bit about the disruption that technology is going to bring us in our urban centers. So let's just dive right into it, because I got all kinds of stuff to talk about yet today. So hopefully we can get to some of these other things. I've been teasing everybody about the QWERTY keyboard and how that came to be. So hopefully we can get to that as well. But let's get right into urban disruption.
Yeah, so it's funny that, we're talking about this today because it's something that's been on my mind a lot. Here in New York, it's amazing to me to see just how many people are still rebuilding after Superstorm Sandy.
Okay.
Now, do you recall what Superstorm Sandy was? It was back in 2012.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Yes. Yeah, so what happened was with that storm, it was around October, November 2012, and originally we were supposed to get like a Hurricane 1, a Category 1 hurricane, and people were preparing, but of course, a lot of the times when you hear on the news that a storm's going to be bad, a lot of people say, oh, it's not going to be so bad. It might just be a little bit of hype, right?
Right.
Well, this storm was unlike anything, we've ever experienced before over here, because what happened was it was like the perfect storm where we had a nor'easter that combined with, I guess, what had downgraded into a tropical storm. And also apparently it was a full moon. So the combination of these things
High tides.
had caused exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. High tides, storm surge, lots of wind, and it caused so much damage that over 300,000 homes were damaged or destroyed, and there was $19 billion in damage done from that storm.
Interesting.
Yes. So, with all this, damage and having to rebuild everything, it was very exciting, at least for me, giving me hope, seeing that these developers and the city of New York City and surrounding areas were taking the initiative to start rebuilding New York City and the surrounding areas to help prevent this from happening again. And so I made a list of a couple of really cool things I want to share with you really quick. And it's basically what the plans are to rebuild New York City. So it's disrupting the potential to have this happen again.
Okay.
So have you heard about the Big U?
I am not familiar with that at all.
All right. So this is really interesting to me. I really hope that it ends up following through. So far, there's some reports saying it looks like it's going to be happening. Other reports are saying it might not be what we're expecting it to be. So this is what it is. So coming to New York City in the near future, there's going to be the Big U, which is a massive 10-mile seawall barrier system. It's gonna look like a big U going from about like Midtown area, like West 57th Street will be the left-hand side of the U, and then it's going to swoop down to the Battery, which is at the bottom of New York City, and then it's going to swoop back up the other side on the east side, which will be up to East 42nd Street.
Okay.
So they say that the total cost of this project will be about $540 million.
Okay.
And what they're doing is they want to take this massive seawall, but turn it into a big hub for everything from shopping to entertainment to parks. They want to have like sporting areas. You could play soccer and things like that. There'll be playgrounds, and they even want to have areas for urban farming, which is really neat.
That's
so
intriguing.
Yeah, I mean, it's something very exciting. I hope it happens. But, you know, for climate change, that's the biggest concern right now.
Sure. So it's similar to Dubai, where they have, I mean, I don't think they have seawalls off of Dubai, but they have a series of islands that they have created that kind of, I'm guessing, kind of do the same thing. The idea is that it protects water surge and that type of thing from happening, but gives, you know, like you said, there are parks out there, there are shopping centers. I think there are even people living on some of those islands now.
Yes, there's a huge push right now for people to start exploring living offshore, and I find this very interesting. We should do a whole show on offshore living in the future sometime, for sure.
Okay.
But there's really interesting things to check out, and we'll talk about it another time. Like the Seastead Institute, they're pushing for living on the water, like basically creating floating cities that you would be moving to and living on, almost like its own sovereign type of country type of deal.
Right.
And there's also the Lily Pad project, which is, it looks like a big floating stadium that would serve as a city that in the future, if there are environmental refugees because climate change might be having negative impacts on certain areas, and where do those people go? So it's likely that we might end up seeing something like floating cities, especially outside highly densely populated areas like New York City and then other areas around the world as well.
Interesting. So what's your take on how autonomous vehicles are going to change, how are they going to disrupt our urban areas?
Well, the thing is right now that a lot of people, they do the ride-sharing thing already in places like New York City. It's very common. Most people use an Uber to get around, so that's already happening. But I think that with autonomous cars, it's definitely going to cut down on some of the congestion. I think that instead of people having to take their own car to go into the city, it's going to be more affordable and more accessible for people to, let's say, order an autonomous car, have the autonomous car bring them to New York City, and you don't have as much worry as you do nowadays. If you drive in, you have to worry about parking, which could be $50 or more for a couple hours in the city, and trying to figure out, the best way to get in there with the traffic and everything. It's going to have huge impacts for sure to have autonomous cars. Because another thing too, which is terrible to think about, but listen, the driver is what makes the most amount of money in that transaction when you're taking a long ride, especially from where I am on Long Island into New York City. There's definitely a significant cost to that. So I think that by eliminating the human driver, it's going to have a big impact on things.
Sure.
Especially, a lot of people don't like to drive that far either because they see a big trip as being time taken away from being in the city.
I know Uber has actually stated that when they get to fully autonomous vehicles, that the ride will probably cost about 2/3 of what it does now. So the ride that you're spending $10 for will cost $6.50. So there will be significant savings along with that too. But even when I think about homes, right now I have a 3-stall garage, for example. In the future, I'm not going to need a 3-stall garage anymore. I mean, I may have one car that I buy for long trips, but ride-sharing services are going to dominate what I do on a daily basis because it's going to be sort of so affordable to do so.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. And even now, I mean, so I took an Uber. Actually, I took a Lyft the other day from my work to my home. I was just curious to see how much it would cost. It was under $5. I mean, how do you justify having a car when it just costs you $4 or $5 to go here and there? So. In fact, I felt so guilty about it costing so little. I actually tipped the driver more than what the ride cost because I figured it was worth his time to take me home. So yeah, I think it really changes the dynamic about how we build, how we live, all of this stuff when you're able to summon a car anytime you want.
Right, exactly. And that's just one of many things that will change, even with things like deliveries. Imagine how many cars and trucks are on the roads all the time because of deliveries that need to be made. So if we have, as we start introducing autonomous cars and autonomous delivery robots and things like that, it's also going to have a huge impact on the crowds in the streets and cars on the roads and things like that. So
I mean, you're running after your everyday milk and things like that, when a drone can go pick that stuff up for you instead, takes that car off the road, and you take that times millions of instances a day. I mean, quite frankly, and we'll just get into this. I guess we're coming up at the break, so let's talk about if you're a city planner and if you're trying to look at studies that you're doing now, how they are actually false. So let's come back and talk about that.
Right now, it's 37.
Here's Sean Hannity, weekday afternoons on Super Talk 1270.
Follow the Guru of Geek everywhere he goes. Post your comments or questions at thetechranch.com. Once again, your Guru of Geek, Marlo Anderson.
And in studio, we have producer extraordinaire Jim Walsh joining us from the island of Long.
And the geezer.
Oh, that's right. And the geezer who's just kind of sleeping. Hey! There he is, his one word a week.
Yeah, not feeling very talkative.
Of course, Miss Metaverse Katie is joining us from the island of Long as well. We're talking about disruption in cities. Actually, this disruption is going to be taking place everywhere. So Jim, you've taken an Uber or Lyft before?
Not yet.
Okay. So if you were to move into a new place,
right?
I'm just thinking about in the future, would a garage, if you were in an area that was serviced by Lyft and Uber or other ride-sharing services as they become available, would a garage be so important to you moving forward, do you think, or not?
Well, it's nice to have here because of the weather.
Right.
If we have situations like we had this past year around Christmas and New Year's, it's nice to have a place to put that car. We don't have to worry about digging it out of everything.
But if you didn't have to worry about your car so much because you were taking a ride-sharing service to work, for example, would that be...
Is that affordable, though?
Well, like I said, it only cost me $5 to take a ride home the other day.
Okay.
So...
but if you're doing that every day to and from work, it starts to add up.
That's $10 a day.
Yeah.
$50 a week, $200 a month. I mean, you think about this.
Which is less than what you would pay for a new car if you bought a new car and financed it. Yeah.
And if you...
For GMAC or whatever.
Yeah, and you take that into account, and then all your fuel costs and insurance and everything else that goes into that. I think a lot of families are going to start looking at that and saying, hey, we own 3 cars now. Maybe we can get away with 1 or 2 and use ride sharing. That's kind of my thinking here.
Right.
So if that's the case, and then I really take that into the city where parking is such a huge issue. They got these huge parking structures and everything else. I think that's going to go away. Yeah. I really do.
Well, I can see cities like New York where most people get by just fine without a car anyway.
Right. I agree.
I could see it happening in some of the other big cities. Chicago, probably. Probably not. I don't know about L.A. I mean, everything's so spread out in L.A. You got to drive so far to get anywhere.
It kind of depends on where you're at.
Yeah.
It really is. It really does. So, Katie, we were talking a little bit about, if you're a planner, a city planner, and moving forward. So let's say you're looking at adding some new roads to New York. Just saying, or you're going to widen some roads or whatever. You're looking at a 20-year plan, and you're not taking into account what drones and flying cars and autonomous cars are going to do. Do you think that should impact how that study is how you're looking at this study?
I think so, because technology is definitely changing everything. I think that a lot of the things that we could be or we should be doing to make our cities and areas better are going to be ways that are going to free up more spaces. I feel that the old way of doing things we're going to look back on these times of having, let's say here on Long Island, we still have the electric wires running above ground, which even after Hurricane Sandy or Superstorm Sandy, they just rebuilt it the same exact way.
Right.
So, for example, also we have the Long Island Railroad, which it takes up a lot of space. You can't really do much along the tracks or anything like that. So if they replace that with, say, a Hyperloop or ET3, now you suddenly have almost like a monorail system. But instead of a monorail, you have these big clear tubes that run above ground or underground, and you're freeing up all that space. So as a planner, you could be taking that into consideration, because now if you have, let's say, this Hyperloop instead of the Long Island Railroad train, you can now put park, shopping, entertainment, anything that you'd like. You'd have that open space now. So that's definitely something to consider.
So I did, as you know, I did a TEDx talk a couple weeks ago, and my topic was disruption. And I started the whole thing about New York City, as a matter of fact. In 1900, they had done a study about a huge problem that they were having, because the city had grown by 1.1 million people in the last decade and all this other stuff. And the issue was horse manure.
Yeah.
And, the study stated that in 20 years, from 1900 to 1920, they would be dealing with 3 times more horse manure than they are right now. So the city geared up for this. The city spent all this money and all this other stuff to gear up for a problem that went away because technology surpassed the horse, in 1920.
Yeah, Mr. Ford came along.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And they already had the horseless carriage at the time, but they all thought it was kind of a fad.
It was a novelty.
Yeah.
It was a gimmick.
It just wasn't going to go anywhere, and they didn't take that into consideration. And I feel we're kind of at the same time right now. I know it's not horse manure, although I guess you could say it kind of is.
Well,
but
speak for yourself.
I just don't buy into the fact that we're going to be spending probably hundreds of billions, if not trillions of dollars developing this infrastructure to meet our current demands, when we should be spending that money instead on like Hyperloops and maybe improving the current infrastructure we have, because there's going to be less cars. There's just going to be less cars on the road, and the cars that are going to be on the road are going to be much more efficient. So,
I think infrastructure is going to be possibly the big issue of the next 10, 20 years.
I
in this
agree with
country,
that.
because we have a lot of roads that are crumbling. We have a lot of bridges right here in town.
Yes.
We have that issue going on now with the railroad bridge.
Right.
It's not just here. It's everywhere.
It's everywhere. It's everywhere. And
all those bridges and buildings and roads that were built back in the 20s and 30s, it's getting things are getting a little funky in some of those places.
I just wouldn't be spending money on adding to the infrastructure. If you got a 4-lane road going here right now, to spend the extra money to make it an 8-lane road, to me, by the time you got that project done, 10 years from now, we're going to be in the age of the Jetsons. Right. I mean, we're going to have people that are going to be flying around in cars, and they're going to be, taking autonomous vehicles, so the roads are going to be used a lot more efficiently. And so why would you spend all that extra money on that?
I don't know. I remember the guy who wrote Megatrends, whatever his name was, Nesbitt, I think.
Okay.
He talked about this in his book, and he said that the future will actually look a lot more like the present than we realize. He said if you're counting on dramatic changes in our basic day-to-day lives, he said that's not going to happen. He said the basic things will stay the same.
I agree with that.
We'll still need roads. I mean, we'll still be driving to work or commuting to work, and we'll still need roads to drive on.
Yes.
And things like pencils and paper clips, we'll still need those.
Yep.
So what I'm wondering is not putting you on the spot here, Marlo, but I'm going to put you on the spot. Using the line of reasoning that you just described, I could see somebody coming to Eisenhower in the 50s and saying, well, what do we need this interstate highway thing for?
Sure.
You know, do we really want to do that? Isn't that just kind of a boondoggle?
But don't you think that was futuristic thinking at that time?
Well,
cars were relatively new yet in the 50s. I mean,
well, that was only a part of it, though. I mean, the thing with the interstate highway was he was also thinking about national security.
That's correct.
He was thinking, you know, if Stalin attacked or whatever, and you know somebody started lobbing nukes at us, we're going to have ways to get people moved around the country.
That's correct. Yeah. So I think it was very futuristic thinking on that part. And I'm not saying we need to take away the roads. What I'm talking about is the expansion of all this infrastructure.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
I am not a fan of the expansion of it.
Well, that's why I thought the interstate, because you said expansion.
Right.
And I'm thinking, from 2-lane to 4-lane, which in some areas has made a lot of sense.
Oh, there's no doubt about that. Absolutely no doubt about that. But I don't think at this current juncture I would spend a lot of extra time on that. There are certain instances. I mean,
North Washington Street, right here in town, you go north of Century, it's now been expanded.
And there's, even in northern North Dakota, there's a road, for example, that I think should move from a 2-lane to a 4-lane to accommodate the additional truck traffic.
We should talk about that on my show one week.
Sure.
Maybe bring you in.
We'll do that. But there's all kinds of things that are going on. But I just think as an overall thing, the addition of, if you're in L.A., for example, and you're looking at, adding 4 more lanes on something that's going to take 10 or 15 years to do, I can tell you right now that you're not going to need to do that because the ride-sharing services are going to take care of that. They just simply are. So anyway, that's just my opinion, I guess. Katie, what do you think?
I completely agree, Marlo. It's so funny that you're saying this because I've been talking about this a lot lately. And a part of me has been talking about launching a project, which we'll talk about another time. But I really feel inspired to help gathering communities together and start informing them about the need to do these things because there's so many people who are completely unaware of what the options are to help kind of make these changes. Because the way it is now, the status quo is just going to keep on remaining until people in local areas start taking the initiative to rally behind these innovative ideas. And here, too, it's our infrastructure is crumbling. It's constantly under construction. It's terrible to look at. And our taxes are absurd. And there's no innovation. Enough is enough.
Yep. Yeah, I absolutely agree. And, I look at flying cars, for example. We're going to actually have flying cars before we have totally autonomous vehicles. And if I have a choice when I go to the car lot next time of an autonomous vehicle, a flying car, and the flying car costs $15,000, like the E-Hang one that's coming out, and I just fly it with I program the coordinates of my phone and it flies me there and back, I would be crazy not to take this. Why would I want to drive around on streets anymore when I can just zip across town and land and go for coffee someplace,
Yeah.
Just saying. I'm just saying, Jim. So, and I want my drone to go get my pizza.
I mean, that was our fantasy years ago. We'd be sitting at a red light thinking, gee, if we could just do like a George Jetson thing here.
I'm not getting to the QWERTY keyboard. Unbelievable. Hey, next week, everybody, we will be talking about the QWERTY keyboard and how it came to be after my little tease on that.
Yeah.
But there's some cool stuff about that. Katie, it's a pleasure as always.
Thank you.
Thanks. We'll see you next week. Jim?
Yes, sir.
Same to you.
Thank you.
Take care, everybody.